YouTube's removal of what it deems misinformation about vaccines is a good first step toward the elimination of lies.
But I think it's important to recognize that it's not really censorship, but a valid use of editorial discretion.
The American Religious Town Hall is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here is your host and moderator.
Welcome, viewers. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Andrea Luxton. I am the moderator of the program. And we are now going to meet our panelists.
Howdy, I'm Tom Plumley. I'm the senior minister of First Christian Church in beautiful downtown Fort Worth, Texas. Our congregation is a part of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ.
My name is Mel Robeck. I'm senior professor of church history and ecumenics and special assistant to the president for ecumenical relations at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California. I'm also an Assemblies of God minister.
Hi, I'm Carl Trovall. I'm professor of ethics and history at Concordia University in Austin, Texas.
My name is Bishop Michael Olson, and I serve as the Bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Fort Worth, Texas.
Thank you, panelists. And here is our program. In late September 2021, YouTube banned all vaccine misinformation from its platform. The move came after a month and sometimes years-long debate between government and Facebook, Google, YouTube, Twitter, and other social media giants about corporate responsibility. Almost 2 years into the COVID-19 pandemic, YouTube decided to remove all videos claiming that vaccines do not reduce the likelihood that one might contract or transmit the disease, that approved vaccines cause cancer, autism, or infertility, or that the vaccines contain elements that the government will use to track people. Some say this is YouTube arbitrarily censoring free speech, and that it opens the door for creeping authoritarianism from government elites. Others say the same sort of self-policing needs to be done by social media giants on an array of other misinformation. Either way, this removal has the potential for affecting the ways we express ourselves, the divisions among us, even our democracy itself. So our questions today are, should other media platforms follow YouTube's lead? Secondly, is vaccine information the only area social media needs to police themselves? If so, where does their responsibility end? And thirdly, what if religious information begins to be censored or removed from platforms? We'll start our conversation by returning to those who started today.
Thank you. Let me begin by going to some of the things that you said in your moderator's statement, Madam Moderator, and simply repeat. The vaccines that were that have been created to fight the COVID-19 virus do not cause cancer. They do not cause autism. They do not cause infertility. They are not a feature of any effort by the government to put something in you by which they will track you, okay? Those are simply false statements. The problem is that that sort of misinformation, those sorts of lies have been put out there and are detrimental to the health of millions of people. And indeed, if we take it to other forms of misinformation that are on these social media platforms as well, to the health of our democracy and to the future of our nation. We need to recognize that what YouTube did is a good first step. It is the sort of self-policing that communication organizations have done since the beginning of communication organizations, since the first editor of the first newspaper. Newspapers and name any sort of form of communication from the past, they always had editors, always had people who were making decisions about what people should be told and what people should not be told. Sometimes they were making decisions based on the facts, and admittedly, sometimes they were making decisions based on profits or other things that are probably less magnanimous. But information never has been massively distributed willy-nilly in human history until the age of the internet. And we are just now beginning to learn how to place helpful curbs on the spread of information on the internet. And what YouTube did was merely a small first step in the right direction, I think, toward beginning to understand what some of those curbs can and should be.
Thank you. Well,
Well, in some ways I agree with you, but I have read enough newspapers to know that there was a period from late 1890s all the way through the 1930s that we call a period of yellow journalism. Anything could go. And it was, some of it's really funny, and some of it's really mean, and some of it's really biased, and so we have come a long way since that time. But we know, we've known this for a long time, sex sells. We know that hate sells. We know that fear sells. We know that conspiracy sells. We know that controversy of almost any kind sells. That's what sells. That's why people buy the paper. That's why people subscribe to particular online podcasts and so forth. But we're caught in that all the time. I do a tour in LA. I've taken about 15,000 people on this tour of early Pentecostal sites in Los Angeles. And PBS came along with me one time. Harvey Cox was there from Harvard and so forth, and they went along with me all day and said, wow, this is really good. And then about 3 months later, they hadn't put anything on TV. I said, well, why? He said, well, there wasn't enough controversy. There's not something that's going to keep our watchers intact, so we're just going to forget it. And they did. And that's okay. I was quite happy with that because I wasn't sure that it was a good thing in the first place. But the fact is, when we get to social media, we've lost our ability to have civil discourse for the most part. And I don't like the idea that we're calling this editorial, censorship, and that these groups are censoring. Every company has the right to set up its own rules. You can do this, you can do this, you can't do this, you can't do that. But those rules are not necessarily always evenly enforced, and they're not equally enforced, and they're not always clearly understandable. But when we sign on to sign up for that particular social media track, we agree to certain kinds of things. I know every day, almost every day, I get something online that says, do you agree to accept this, or you accept that, or can we sell your name, or, those kinds of things happen all the time. But the fact of the matter is, it's all about money in the end. And so we need help in self-governance. I don't think media companies are in the business of self-governance, not very well. They need outside pressure. It doesn't have to come from government, but it can come from people who say, no longer will I subscribe to this. I just think they need help to do that.
Thank you.
Well, I think I just maybe take a step back a little bit on this, and that is that YouTube is a social media platform, all right? It's social media, all right, which is a platform where people can go and express anything that they want to express, all right? It's not the news, all right? It's certainly not a normative platform, not meant to be, shouldn't be treated that way, and it's certainly not somewhere I'm going to go to get my news or the truth. All right, same with Facebook, and we see, or whatever Facebook is calling itself by the time this is aired, we see they've set the algorithms, in a sense, in order to make more money, which has been at the expense of the self-esteem of young girls, for example. All right, it's a social media platform, and it's meant for self-expression, etc. So, with that in mind, it's not peer-reviewed. All right, so they can govern by the principles they want to govern, but it's a business. All right, and so I just think that take it at stake. What's concerning, though, is that so many of our media outlets have, in a sense, become forms of just self-expression again. That media is following social media, in the sense that it's just become less and less substantive, more and more opinion-driven, and certainly emotivist. And I think that's a serious problem with this. When it comes, for example, one of the things I find helpful is the website of the National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. They peer review everything before they put it on their website. All right, as far as science is concerned, engineering, medicine, and then that also directs it to trustworthy peer-reviewed journals. Unfortunately, today in social media, people who have blogs, all right, they have a blog or a video blog. All right, that's not peer-reviewed. Now, they can ape certain aspects of journalism. They do an interview, etc., but they don't. I mean, it's not peer-reviewed. It's not held to the accreditation of journalism and its principles. And even that slipped a little. I had interviewed one time I had a call from a newspaper reporter. So I'm like, okay, hello, and she asked me a question, and so I asked her, I just said, I go, how much of the story do you have written? And she goes, I just need your quote. And I said, well, then I guess you've got the story written, so what are you going to learn from my quote? And is it going to change anything of your story? And the answer was no. Well, then why bother? I think that's the problem, is that you've got journalists who have their agenda, and they're going to push it, even if they're, if they fact check, but it's how they array their facts that tells the story and narrative, and I think that's the type of honest integrity that's required. And also, I think we need to read things with a healthy sense of skepticism, but certainly anything on YouTube. I mean, anybody can put anything on YouTube, and and I just think buyer beware.
Yeah, let the buyer beware. And I will say, I've had to fix some of my, my vacuum robots and all of that, and and YouTube is great for home repair videos. It's amazing.
YouTube paying for that?
Well, I'm sure I paid them. Listen, I mean, this is where I was going to start. Is that if something's free, you're the product. I mean, really, again, it is about monetization, and so you're clicking different things, I mean, I get it. I get fed more and more extreme material, depending on what kind of thing I'm watching. And I say extreme, it isn't like, way out there, but it's just this gradual movement. Oh, if you're interested in this, you'll be interested in this, because it's a little bit more titillating. And so, again, I mean, this gets back into you know, if it bleeds, it leads, right? And so this is why we were talking about this as we're taping this. Of course, we just had this tragedy in Houston with the people being crushed, and everyone's asking me whether I watched it. And it's like, what do I want to watch people die for? I mean, I get it. I understand what the fact is, and I just don't have any desire to go to that constant clicking.
Voyeurism.
Yeah, voyeurism. And I love what you talked about, the peer review piece too. I mean, it's a considering of the source, right? You always have to look at what's the source. This is what we try to do in the academia constantly, is like you can't just pull anything from anywhere and use it as a fact in your paper. You have to use peer reviewed, which means that you have people who have studied a subject and they understand it. They can even disagree with one another on central ideas, but the fact is that it's peer-reviewed and that you take that material and you use that as part of the information gathering. It's something I hope that we can do for the general public in our public schools, and that you're right, social media is not peer-reviewed. Anybody can put anything up, and I mean now, you know, this gets back to the social media companies as a whole. Yeah, they're going to have to self-police, but I don't trust people to self-police.
I don't either.
I mean, my daughter's a reporter, so I'm sensitive to some of this stuff. She reports immigration issues, and here's the thing: is that a lot of these media companies too, all they're doing is aggregating other people's work and saying it's news and putting it together. I think the other piece is this actually a journalistic enterprise that actually goes out and does the legwork, the footwork, going and visiting and interviewing people and gathering information? And I get it that putting it together is an interpretive skill, but I think that after the yellow journalism phase, journalism really got together and said, we need to develop some standards for ourselves and hold each other to it. We can sure have disagreements, but I mean, I think this is going to be a whole piece of it, and I'm probably just repeating everything you all said, but
well, and their work is a critical piece of maintaining some semblance of social fabric.
Yeah.
The problem, Bishop, is that people do take what they see on YouTube as news. They do take what they hear there as something at least factual enough that I'm going to share it with all my friends.
Right.
And after that is done multi-thousands of times, then, well, gosh, it must be true. It must be the fact. Was that a community conversation about critical race theory, this boogeyman, and the guy that first came out with all the objections to that has said in an interview, we created this firestorm out of nothing. It just simply we just simply decided that this is where we're going to aim all of our venom about a whole bunch of unrelated things. And that's the way that our communication system is working these days, and that's a problem.
It is. And then, without a doubt, but what is the measurement then that YouTube is using for credibility? All right, because it seems to me it's algorithms and to sell space. It's not, again, it's a social media platform such as it is. I mean, you see the same thing with Twitter and Facebook. I mean, you know, China has the Taliban has an account, you know, and they decide somebody else isn't going to have that. Well, they've got not only their biases, they have their vested interests. All right, that's the other thing, and it's multinational. I mean, without a doubt. And I think that's a big problem as well.
Time for a break.
We hope you're enjoying today's program. If you'd like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the vision and history of the program, and we invite you to become a ministry partner, explore our Town Hall Estates healthcare facilities, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, we look forward to receiving your letters. You may write us at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. If you have a prayer request, please send it to prayerrequest@americanreligious.org. Thank you for writing and thank you for watching. Now, back to today's closing statements.
And welcome back to today's show. We are now going to move into the concluding arguments of our group.
Thank you. Let me simply encourage all of our watchers to take personal responsibility for the things that you see and you read in the social media environment, in any media environment, whether it's new or old, whether it's a respected newspaper or whether a long-established newspaper, or whether it's something brand new on something that your grandchildren show you on this internet thing. Learn to check facts. Learn to confirm sources, and to find out who it is that said this and what right do they have to say it? What background do they have that gives them special credence to be taken as a source or somebody that we should listen to about the information? Because the expanding problem is that information just continues to bombard us, and we have to learn the best ways to deal with it. And the problem that you mentioned, Bishop, of sources from overseas, and the potential for intentional misinformation and lies to sway American public opinion has already been shown to have taken place, and that is a concern as well. And all of us, including the social media giants, need to take responsibility in this area.
I just have a couple of things, and the first is just pieces of advice also for everyone. First of all, it's been said, but to not use social media for your news, even for your health information. Again, anybody can put anything up. I just don't. There could be right things, there could be wrong things, but to not use it. I mean, I don't even. Let's just. If you want to use it for personal stuff, I get that. You want to stay connected with your kids or your grandkids. Or your other people. I think that's what that's for, is for that kind of human connection. So that would be kind of my first advice. So where do you get this information? I think you need to get it from those sources. And I mean, honestly, this is the rule I learned very young, and that is read a major newspaper. I mean, you can read your local newspaper of your city, but read a major newspaper that leans left, like the New York Times, one that leans right, like the Wall Street Journal. You're going to get kind of a centrist point of view. They're going to have their opinions. And if you want to read something like National Review, which is a more conservative journal, or if you want to read the new, a more liberal journal as well, feel free to do that. But I think that those, because they have editorial content and people watching those things, you're getting those conservative liberal opinions, but they've been thought through and are well supported and well documented, and they're clear. And I think that that's a piece that you read both left and right. You don't read one source and only one side of things, but read both. And that's all I have. I think just that advice alone would move us further down the line.
Thank you.
I think it's important for us not to make social media something that it was never intended to be. It's a valuable form of self-expression and for sharing of news among people, among families, among community. but it's really not an authoritative source. Go to reliable sources, and I'd ask you to ask yourselves, what have you learned that can be verified in another place that's an established media source, that's an established source of a journal with peer review? When have you ever really changed your mind on something, or do you only read something that either A, makes you mad all the time, right, and you read it to incite your own passions, or read it that reinforces you that somebody else who gets mad in the same way that you get mad over the same things? And I think that's a problem with social media. Likewise, I would also add that, simply put, that it involves a lot of conjecture. All right, and conjecture is not the truth or the fact, and there's a challenge with newspapers dying slowly and changing into something else.
All of this is good, and I totally agree with what all of you have said in this regard, but the problem in my world is that people no longer read.
Yeah.
And even my students have criticized me for talking about the local newspaper. You know, nobody gets their news from the newspaper anymore. They get it off the social media, okay? And that's our problem. I mean, that's a huge problem. You know, and I don't think it's just a social media issue. I think it's a major network issue. If you watch 30 minutes of CBS News, 50% of it is fluff or advertisements. You might get 3 stories, about 3 to 4 minutes apiece, and that's it. So we have this crash of all of these buildings, or this building in Florida, and we hear about it for weeks. And then we have this crash of this building in Nigeria last week. What did you hear about it? Nada, nothing. It's as though those people don't count. Our people do. And I think we really need to wind things up.
Thank you all for a great conversation today. The Charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and can declare their beliefs without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America we believe in civil and religious freedom, not only in theory but in reality. And now, friends, until next week, at the same time and over the very same channel, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you.